Welcome back to the Choral Music podcast. This is episode 11. This is going to be an interesting episode. We're going to be talking about choirs this episode, and you're going to get a little bit of an insight into why I love choirs, and some of the stories that I've told in some of the earlier episodes are going to blossom, I guess, and we'll hear a little bit more about that. But to keep me in check, because I might ramble forever and ever and ever, I have to keep that in check, but I need someone to do that for me. So welcome to CJ.
How long did it take you to do that?
About an hour and a half.
And you did all parts separately, or did
all
you
parts separately? Yeah,
you use a plugin? No, you did all parts separately.
I did all parts separately. So I recorded like the piano version first, so I have something to listen to as a reference, and then I did. I actually did 8 tracks, so I did the first part of it and then the last part of it. But all
That's
parts.
hysterical.
That's from the Music Man, actually. You know, when the board of directors comes down looking for his credentials, goes ice cream. Yes. That's exactly what that was. So
That's hysterical. Very well done.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're good. Have a great evening.
And good night.
That was a short podcast for an episode. That's hysterical.
I wanted to see how long I can go with these introductions. I think I'm tapped out at this point. So you got a fanfare and you got a barbershop opening. So suck it.
Oh, now I need to figure out something to just come in on. Like, I need to think of my own intro, like a theme song. All right. Challenge accepted.
Challenge
by me,
accepted.
Created by me. So
how are you, sir?
I am doing all right.
Your voice sounds much better this week.
Thank you. I'm still a little, depending on how long I speak for or what room I'm in, my allergies kick in and my voice changes a bit. But otherwise, yes, thank you. It's definitely better than it has been. And otherwise, it's not bad. Still busy at work. Will be for a while.
Yep.
But no other complaints going on. How about yourself?
About the same. Today was a big day. We had our in our office, our tech department moved into a conference room. And today we got our desks in finally. We've been using like movable tables. So we finally got our desks in. And one of the executives, we sent an email that said, hey, by the way, there might be some noise while they're building the desks. And he said, we know it takes a long time to build a hot tub. Well, we understand. So I went, hold my beer, went right to Amazon and bought an inflatable pool and put an inflatable pool in there. And so after the desks were built, I walked into his office and I said, hey, I'm having trouble filling up the hot tub. He went, what? I said, yeah, can you come help me fill up the water? And he walked in and I had the tiny little inflatable pool.
And that picture you sent me was fantastic. Just to have,
and it was funny. He's like, well, this is going right on Facebook. I was like, okay. Didn't think we were allowed to post on Facebook, but okay.
That's fantastic.
So
that's so good. I still think that you should go now and buy those plastic balls from the ball pit.
Yeah, it's funny because the secretary is like, I think I have some at home. I was like,
oh my god, that is
all right, cool.
That would be so good. And like a random rubber ducky in the middle. Just
we're getting a blow up flamingo. So
nice.
Yeah,
it's even better.
Yep. So what are you listening to this week?
So I wow, my voice just cracked.
Puberty again. Here we go.
Yeah, well, it's about that time. So I've been on a Metallica kick lately, which is kind of weird. I mean, not weird. I do listen to them, so it's not like I don't listen to them, but not as much as I have been. Like, it hasn't been like, it's never been an everyday thing. Mm-hmm. I think I had a rough day, and then I put them on just because sometimes matching that anger in a sense, or that feel. Mm-hmm. I don't want to really say anger, but that intensity helps kind of bring it back. Mm-hmm. But then, it's kind of playing around. So this is what I want to do before I talk about the song that I've been focusing on. So I'm going to play something. Okay.
Yeah. Do I need to unshare? Or are you good?
Yeah, I'll share it.
Right, cool.
I'm going to play something that I want you to listen to, and you tell me if you know what it is.
Okay.
And there's a reason for it, and then we'll go from there. And I'm only going to play like the first beginning of like a little part of the beginning. You should be able to grab it. I don't know how much Metallica you know.
Not a lot.
But you may know the song. If not, we can talk. So here's the song.
Nothing else matters?
Yes. Now, that I was watching the movie. This was about a few months ago, and I didn't think about it for a few months after I watched it. But the movie, The Jungle Cruise, with The Rock and Emily Blunt.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I've never seen it.
Fun movie. I'm not saying it's like the most amazing movie, but it was just a fun movie, and it was. That's what I think it was supposed to be, a fun adventure movie. James Newton Howard composed the music for it. So I'm watching the movie, and this is a very distinct song, because if you know Metallica, it's a distinct song. And I'm like, did they really just do this? So it is an orchestrated piece of Nothing Else Matters. There's no singing in it. And Metallica does play in it. So later on in the song, you can hear them playing. And then this is like a 1 and 27 seconds version that's in the movie, but then there's like a 5-minute version that he does.
Okay.
And it's fantastic. So the reason why I wanted to play that is because if you listen to the beginning of the actual song, it's pretty impressive how close he keeps it. So I'm going to play the actual song now, the from their album. It was cool to just, I've been playing them back and forth because I was just curious to see. And it's impressive.
Very interesting. Yeah, it is.
And I mean, the introduction of like having Metallica play in the piece for the movie was just, it was very cool. So, it's actually not a bad, it's not a bad soundtrack. I enjoy it. This is probably one of the more heavier songs in the sense of what's being played. The other ones are a little bit more up and fun, and there's a couple of songs that based upon the mood of the movie, they fit the mood. But it's a great soundtrack, but it's just fun to have that as a part of it. It's a Disney movie, so when I first heard it, I'm like, really? They put Metallica in a Disney movie? Wow. This is fantastic. It was a cool thing. So I've been listening to this album, and I actually really like the song Nothing Else Matters. So you need to learn it on guitar, and we can do it acoustically.
All right, cool.
There's your challenge. You got
cool.
You got about a year, so figure it out.
Sounds so yeah. So it's that and More Than Words, right? We're gonna do that one.
More Than Words, yes. We need to do More Than Words, and I gotta either grow my hair really long or my beard really long, so we can look like either like ZZ Top doing it or something like that. But so I've been listening to that album. I like a lot of the songs on it, I know some diehard heavy metal fans that are not always huge fans of Metallica. Mm-hmm. But then you have diehard Metallica fans, so it's very interesting. But I like them for the randomness and a few of their select albums. And it was one of those groups that I listened to a lot in high school. So once in a while, it's cool to listen to it and kind of be nostalgic in a sense.
Yeah, and I mean going back to my guilty pleasures, because I was singing Taylor Swift before you came on. But I mean, they're one of those groups that they've been around so long and they've done so much for the industry.
Right.
Like, there's so much respect from me for them.
Right. Right.
So
and it's funny because you were talking about the the albums that they did with the orchestra, like the
Yeah.
symphony orchestra.
Yep.
I've never listened to those albums yet, and
Really?
just after this, I'm like, you know what, I really need to listen to them now. And just
My
check
favorite
them
is
out.
the one that you should start with is No Leaf Clover. That's the one that hooked me.
Okay, cool.
So that was my favorite.
How about yourself? Have you been listening to anything different?
I'm still hooked on the choir stuff. I got backed up on my podcasts, so I've been catching up on podcasts most of this week. And then in preparation for this episode, just listening to more choral stuff. So yeah, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing outrageous to play. I mean,
Is Nickel Creek officially off your record right now? Off your list?
I listened to them last week.
That's funny. But
Like
don't get me
Saturday,
wrong. Like
but-
I listened to Sarah Watkins, so definitely threw them on at some point. So I totally
Yeah, and it's
get
funny
it.
because I re-listened to the podcast because part of me likes to make sure that they're still up there and they're what I put up there is actually there and that nothing has changed. So I listened to them as they get released, and this week Sarah Watkins' episode was released live. So I listened to that this week, and I was like, oh, I forgot about Nickel Creek. Start listening to that again.
So the reason why I like listening to them, and I'm wondering if you feel the same way, I feel like you're listening to friends.
Yeah.
Like it feels like your friends are sitting next to you and they're just playing.
And do you think that might be because of their age? Because they're basically our age?
I think that's part of it. I don't want to put 100% into that, but it's possible. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it has to do 100% with our age. Maybe it has to do with the fact that they're right around our age group, and maybe 20 years ago I wouldn't have felt the same way. But right now, just when you just kind of want to hear a friend, like they're such a great group to put on. Like even Sarah Watkins, just the album that we spoke about, the one that she covers a lot of the children's songs,
Under the
family
Pepper Tree.
songs. Yeah, and throwing that on, you're just like, all right, cool. I feel good. That's good. That's too funny. Yeah, no, it was just funny. I was trying to figure it out, like why do I keep going back to it? But that's why I feel like, where's the campfire? That type of thing.
Yep.
Cool. All right,
and their
so
stuff is just so good. It's just in the harmonies. Just.
Oh yeah, no, of course, of course. All right,
so choral music.
Make it interesting.
Yes. So it's funny because we were going to record last week, and it was just a crazy week, and we were so far ahead recording wise. I thought we needed a break, and I kind of threw this choral idea together last minute. And it kind of piggybacks on our last episode a little bit because we talked about choral music a little bit. But I was thinking about it, now that I'm doing more singing and, preparing for it. Choral music for me, and I don't know about you, but it has played an extremely important role in my life. And I think that it's something that everyone needs to experience in the right way. So I'll tell lots of stories. So my high school was known for its choir, and I got a tremendous amount of education musically from my high school choir and my high school in general. So my high school music teacher, my music theory teacher, was from Manhattan School of Music, and we were doing 4-part harmonic dictation by the second month of school. So 8 to 16 measures. He would play the 4-part pieces twice. We had to memorize it and write it down. I didn't come anywhere near that in college.
Right.
Harmonic dictation like that. In college, the director was from Eastman School of Music. We were doing 4-part Bach chorales by the end of our first year, singing a cappella with solfege syllables, movable do. Again, didn't come anywhere close to that in college. And so my first year, I played piano for a long time, but my singing was nowhere near where it should have been. And having the ability to read all of that stuff has really served me well in my, I've made a lot of money. Not a lot of money, but I've been able to put food on the table just by being able to play and sing in choirs, because churches need that. And, so a lot of churches pay me to do it. In fact, tomorrow I'm getting paid to play a rehearsal. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without my training from high school. But on top of that, the group that I sang with in high school was a really special group. It was really more like a family. And my junior year in high school, my father passed away. And the amount of people that I had never talked to, like I knew who they were, but the amount of people that came to the wake, like called me and was like, "Hey, just want to make sure you're okay." Like I don't know these people well. I mean, like they took the time to do that. It was amazing. So that really kind of started to cement this family choir thing for me. And I've always been drawn to the music. I mean, the stuff that we sang. We were lucky where we didn't really, because our director was there for almost 20 years at the point, and he had made such a name for himself. We were able to do whatever music we wanted to do, regardless of religion or whatever. Like it was just, as long as it was done well, they didn't care. So we did parts of the Messiah. We did, Brahms, stuff. We did, Mendelssohn's Elijah. We did Chichester Psalms. We just, so much religious music that a lot of other schools couldn't have gotten away with.
Right.
So I was exposed to a lot of really great music because of that. And in my junior year, so my father passed in September, that summer, the following summer, we went to Sweden. We toured through Sweden for 2 weeks. We sold out 3 concerts. In the past, the choir had done ACDA conventions and won multiple, so that was really my foundation in music. And that's really kind of what got me to stick with music. And I started, in our first episode, I mentioned 2 things. I mentioned, one of my fondest performances was a concert in Sweden. And it was our second concert, and we sang it for our host families. And it was really unique because we got to sing for the people that we were staying with. It was, and the connection that we felt with our audience was a different connection than just, hey, we're from America here, we're going to sing some songs for you. Like this was like, we had spent several days with them. I remember my buddy Lee, who I mentioned last episode, who now lives in England. Like we were roommates throughout this, and we were playing like duets with the family, like on their piano, and they were like, just singing along because they couldn't play the piano, but we could. So it was just a lot of fun. And so I want to play a little bit. The other story that I want to tie into this is I talked about that out of body experience that I had in one of our rehearsals. So this is the song that we had done. This is a song by a piece by Larry Fleming called Lord of the Dance. It's based on a Shaker hymn tune. But I want to play just a little bit of it. So that was one of our traditionals. It was one of 7 pieces that we did every single year. And it was we used it as a training piece for the new folks coming in, just to kind of get everyone up to speed and move forward. But I was thinking about this driving home last week when we were about to record, and I mean the importance of choirs. I mean for me, musically has been huge. But then I started thinking about how important they are for human beings. And I don't want to get terribly political, but I think about you've sung in choirs before. It's a lot of it is listening, and the importance of listening in a choir is so huge because you've sung in groups, I'm sure, where the director said if you can't hear the person singing next to you, you're singing too loud.
Oh, of course, yeah.
That's like a staple. And then it's like, because there's a lot of things that you need to match. It's dynamics. It's vowel shape. Because just because you're singing an ooh vowel doesn't mean the person next to you is saying the same ooh vowel. There's such a discrepancy, and a range of ooh vowels. I think that in our world, we live in a world where we do too much hearing and not enough listening. I remember watching all these Senate hearings and all these things that have been going on, and all these people are just hearing enough so they can hear that silence, so they can jump in with their point of view, but they're not listening. And I think that if you think about the way a choir works, you have, in our case, we had 80 people in our choir on most years. It was 10th, 11th, 12th grade men and 11th and 12th grade women. So it was about 80 people almost every year. But if you think about it, when 80 people go into a room to accomplish something, how often do they come out of that room accomplishing something?
Right. No, it's a very
think about like your meetings at work. Like like you go into the same room. Like how often do those meetings accomplish anything?
Right. No, I totally agree. I think that the idea of being in a room with however many people, you are now sectioned off based upon your voice. I was always in tenor. I know that you were.
I sang bass until college.
Yeah. And then, I did some baritone, like high baritone, whatever. And and depending upon the group small enough, I would swing into alto at some point, just because of what was needed. But yes, definitely listening, definitely making sure your voice blended, definitely making sure that the person on your right can be heard and the person on your left can be heard, so you're not singing too loudly.
Right.
But you're not just listening to people that are in the section with you.
Right.
You're now listening to the basses. You're listening to the altos. You're listening to the sopranos, and you're listening to those other parts in order for you to find the note that you need to come in on, or the rhythm, whatever the case may be. You're listening.
I'll tell you this: like, if you go back and listen to the intro that I did for you this week, like when I started singing, like the first note, it wavers until the next note comes in, so I could lock into that one. So like I was listening for something, but there was nothing there to listen to. Right. So as soon as that second part came in, I knew I had something to listen and lock into. But that's the importance of listening,
Right. And it's also it's funny. There's also the importance to the silence.
Yes.
To the silence. It's I forget. The Sound of Silence, that song, right?
Yep.
I was listening to it. Now, I don't know if it's ever been put into a choir form, but it would be very interesting to hear that song in a choir form, and how would you break it up? But I was listening to the song, and I said to myself, I'm like, how interesting would it be to record this song with the silence? So all the instrumental parts out, and it's just the vocals. So you record it, all the instrumental parts, you record the vocals, so you have a proper recording, and then you just drop out the instrumentals. But you start the piece, so if there's a few measures where there's nothing, there's just silence, and you just kind of like listen through, like that would change your song so much. So when you're listening to a choir, a moment where the choir completely all goes out, everybody's listening at that moment. Even the audience is listening at that moment, because they're waiting to find out who's coming back in.
Yep.
Is it going to be the sopranos? Is it going to be altos? Is it going to be tenors? Is it going to be bass? Is it going to be everybody in one shot?
Yep.
So that concept of listening to somebody is huge in that.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you have, there was one piece, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, and I'm curious your take on it. There was one piece I did. It was an all-state chorus. I think it was my 12th grade year in high school, and we were upstate, and we were doing this song, and I forget who the conductor was. It was a doctor something. Fantastic conductor. And he chose a song, and in the middle of the song, and I think it was Brazilian or Spanish. It was I think it was a Latin language. And at one point, the tenors and the basses had a point where it was like 3 or 4 notes that we sang, but it was freestyle. So you could sing it as fast or as slow as you wanted. You always sang those 4, and there was a certain words. And and the guy next to me sang it slow because he couldn't get the words out. The guy next to me said it, and I was doing it because I was comfortable with the Latin language. I was just going through that. Like I was just, it was just interesting because you're listening to everybody do it differently.
Yep.
But then I heard the recording, and I'm like, it sounded like rain.
Really?
So my question to you, or my statement, and if you agree, have you heard a chorus or listened to a chorus or done a piece where you're singing and it creates this whole other sound? Which I know you talked about that moment where you had an outer body experience, but have you ever sang a piece where it created this sound of rain or thunder. Or ever done that before?
No, I've never done that before.
That was one piece, and there was one other piece I did. It was called Ezekiel Saw the Wheel.
Yep.
I don't know if you've ever done that song.
There
And my
are so
voice
many
is going up.
There are so many versions of it. I've
Right.
done like 3 or 4 different
Okay,
versions.
so the version I'm talking about is there's the middle section. It comes in a round,
I think I know which one you're talking about. I've never done this one, but I've heard it.
and it sounds like a wheel.
Yes.
Sounds like a wheel moving. That's all listening.
Yep.
It wouldn't have worked if it listened. So, which makes me want to hear more about your story of the Outer Bound experience, because I'm wondering if it's that similar feeling. Because who knew that saying Latin words in whatever pace created this kind of rain feel to it in the song? Yeah.
I want to see if this is the one that you're talking about.
Yes. Doomaluma, Doomaluma, Doomaluma. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get this feel of the motion of a wheel.
Mm-hmm.
So while you're singing it, you get that feeling. But then you hear it, like when we heard the recording,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, that worked.
Yep.
When I was doing the one with the Brazilian, with the Latin language, where you couldn't tell that it was rain, but then you hear it, and I was like, really? We were doing that?
That's really cool.
Right.
That's very cool.
So it's just, it's like you were saying, but I'm curious to know more of that outer body experience. Was that recorded too, or no?
It was not recorded, unfortunately. It was just, so it was a rehearsal. It was just, so our last rehearsal every year, what we would do is we would get into a circle and we would thank people for something. We would express gratitude to someone, something, sometimes it was just gratitude towards music, and other times it was, hey, we had what we called octets, which were groups that we would rehearse outside of groups, and I led like 6 or 7 of them one year. So people would thank the octet leaders for teaching them the music and staying after, and sometimes it was running rehearsals or accompanying rehearsals, or just for just being there during a tough time. So that's how the rehearsal started. And Sandy Valerio, who was our director, graduate of Eastman School of Music, one of those people that are, that I look up to because of his talent and his skill, but also because he's one of those people that, I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, that reads energy really well. And, he knew that day something was going to happen. And he was able to capitalize on it and give us an experience that I haven't had since.
What were you singing?
Lord of the Dance, the piece that I played.
Okay, so it was the same dance that you guys.
It was
the same
piece
song
that
you've done before.
Yep.
It was just done in a circular group.
Yep, we were sitting in our room, and it was just a giant circle. We did most of our rehearsing in circles because it's easier to hear other parts.
Yes. Were you separated? Now, in a traditional choir, you're usually separated like soprano, tenor, bass,
Nope, not
and
us.
alto.
We were always mixed.
We were mixed, okay, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think that's a huge thing too, is to be able to hear those other parts.
Yes. And it's funny because I've done this with a lot of groups where, like, I say, okay, I don't want you to stand next to the same voice part, and they all freak out. They go, oh, we can't do that. And then they do it. They go, wow, it's so much easier to hear, my part. It's like, yeah, I know. But part of that is that, and this is something that Dr. McRoy always talked about when we were in college. He would always say, don't play louder, listen louder.
Right.
And it was the same concept, because now you're freaking out that you don't have that part next to you. You don't have that crutch anymore.
Right.
You need to focus more on listening. And that's a skill that I think we're lacking today. And, I mean, just singing in this group, this choir that I'm singing in, I noticed it, and I was not listening either. The basses were, we're working on the Amen of Handel's Messiah, and the basses were singing so loud, and I went, wow. I said, I'm over singing because of them,
Right.
and so what I've learned in the past is I can actually help influence them. So what I started doing is I started singing louder, and then I started singing softer. So they got used to hearing my part, and then when I started singing softer, they went, oh, I can't hear that anymore. So then they started backing off,
Right.
and singing more musically.
Yeah.
So I'm able to influence other parts by doing that, which is kind of cool. But I mean, the concept is you need to listen more.
I think that understanding of discipline that's kind of instilled in you in the music, I think that's what when you're in school and music comes to you. I'm not saying everybody has to do music. I'm not saying that at all. There's some people just it's not their thing.
Yep.
Or they don't sing, or they feel like they can't sing, or they feel like they can't learn an instrument, whatever the case may be, and you step away from it. But I think the idea of introducing kids to music in any way, shape, or form where it requires them to listen. Now, mind you, there's more to it. You have to take in consideration students with disabilities and all that other stuff. But as an overall, if you influence children to be more listeners at that age, it changes things. It's it's a very tough thing because there's a lot of arguments that go along with this and all that stuff. But I agree. My experience in music has been, it's funny. You brought up choirs last week. We talked about it. You did your thing and talked. I don't listen to choirs like you do. I don't. I never have. I've sung in them, and I've listened to the recordings that I've been a part of, but I don't go and say, "Hey, I'm going to go listen to this for some odd hours." And not that I have a problem with the music. I think the music is beautiful. It's just not beautiful. I just nothing.
Yeah.
Last week, I put some stuff on. A few things. I was like, play choir music or whatever. First off, there's a group called The Choir, which I didn't know about. So at first I got them. And then I found a playlist of just random choir music, everything from like Coming to Barana and all that stuff. And I was listening. I'm like, man, I miss singing in a choir.
Yeah.
Because I was trained as a soloist. I went to college to be a soloist, but there's nothing like being in a full choir.
Yep.
Just like you said, those blending of voices, listening to each other, so it makes me itch to want to look and see what's available. I mean, there's men's choirs around me, but it was very interesting. Like it brought back all those times, like you said, the camaraderie, the friendships, the community, and all that stuff.
Yep. We had a sign that would hang up in our rehearsal space, and it was two people yelling at each other, and the one guy says, "I'm not flat, you're sharp," and it was like that is the. I think that's kind of where we are as a society today, where it's not my fault, it's all you, and that's why I think like if everyone took the time to sing in a choir, like you'd get that. It can't be about you, because if it's about you, it's not a choir, and that's a really cool thing.
If it's about you, you're a soloist.
Yep, exactly.
And that's not putting soloists down. Don't get me wrong.
No, it's not. Absolutely not.
But it it goes back to what you said. Music is everywhere. So at those moments where you have groups of people talking to each other, that's a form of music.
Yeah.
In its own right, because someone's
and
it's
also,
a call and response.
Exactly. And remember, music is a language too.
Yeah.
So like the whole concept of music is a discussion, it's a conversation.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a very good point.
And singing in a choir, like how often can you have a conversation with 80 people at the same time?
No, it's true.
I mean, I guess with Zoom we can, but
And those parts in themselves are split up. So you're not just sopranos singing the same thing. You have
Yep.
3 soprano parts. So you have a bunch of sopranos singing with 3 different parts. You have maybe tenor 1, tenor 2, depending because tenor groups are never large enough to have 3 parts.
Yep.
But you know, like you have, and that's the other side to it is that when you're singing together and you're in the audience listening to it, you're just like, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Like you don't realize it. And it's, going back to the secular thing, religion as a whole, everybody has some form of music. Choirs are a big thing depending upon the religion you're in.
Absolutely.
Music in general.
Yeah, because I mean, the way music started was, the church basically paid for composers to write.
Right.
That's how composers made their money. Bach was writing basically a service a week for churches. That's what happened. So a lot of the music that we have today is sacred music. It's very difficult to find choral music that is not sacred. That's secular music. The one that I played a couple of weeks ago, Only in Sleep, that was a secular piece, but it's very difficult to find a piece of that caliber. So much of it is inspired by religion. And there are so many composers, like Brahms was not religious at all. And he wrote the Requiem, he wrote, Let Nothing Ever Grieve Thee, and some really beautiful religious pieces.
Right. You're not going, like, any pieces that you're finding that are not secular are usually a song that it's been written and then broken down to be a choral piece. Yeah. But it wasn't originally written as a choral piece. There's no original, it's far and few between to find an original choral piece that isn't influenced by a sect of religion, a secular, no, absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite albums that I've listened to in the past. So like I said, I don't listen to choirs that often, but so it really has to take me in. I'm not like, this is not putting religion down anyway. And I'm saying stuff that I always said to me. I was raised Catholic. I don't put myself under any religious label. Right. So my thing is my thing, but, there's the album that is done by Kirk Franklin's New Nation, which is called God's Property. That choir, that group, that music is amazing. And just listening to it is, and the tightness of the group and how good they are together. Yeah. Like, forget about the fact of what they're singing about. Just listening to them, you want to sit there and listen to them. There's just so much power behind it. And that was one of the albums back in the day that when I was listening to choir music, I was listening to that type of stuff. I love listening to choir music when it's more upbeat. I like singing in the groups when you're doing like Handel's Messiah. Right. But I like listening to this stuff that's like, that's really cool to hear. Yeah. That's got a great sound. Wow, those voices together are doing something cool. Yeah.
So when we were in college, we did a lot of major works. Did anything stand out to you that we performed together?
So we were together for how many years? 2 years. Yeah. But you transferred
maybe 3 years.
When did you come into the college? 1998.
99.
I was there already, and then you were there for how long?
3 years.
Really? You were there for 3 years?
Yep.
But you didn't go to Italy with us.
No, I didn't go to Italy with you.
You didn't go to Italy. But you know what stood out to me then? Because I couldn't remember. You were in this. September 11th. We did the rolling Mozart's Requiem.
Yes.
Do you remember that? Where we got up, we were at the concert hall at like some god awful hour for choral people. Yep. And we weren't even on stage. We sat in the audience in the seats, and because it was a rolling requiem, it was nationwide. Right? It was a nationwide thing, so, yeah. I think. And then what they did was, depending upon your time zone, you would start singing. We started early because we were East Coast, and then it rolled over to it rolled towards the West Coast. That experience, because of what it was for, right, was an intense and very cool experience. And then the one that I had, but I don't think you were part of it. When we did Alexander Nevsky,
Nope,
the
I
Russian
wasn't
piece.
there for that, no.
No, that one stood out. That one was impressive because it was Russian. We learned Russian, and I thought that was the coolest thing. What else did we sing together? There's so many.
Carmina Burana.
That's when I had a high C.
Yep.
I actually had the high C. I don't know if I still do. I might.
Not the drink, the note.
As I drink and spit up all over my microphone. Yes, not the drink, the note.
We did Bach's Christmas Oratorio.
That's right. We did do that. That was, all of them were really good. He chose really great pieces.
He really did. We did the Brahms Liebeslieder waltzes.
Mm-hmm. And then, were you in chamber singers?
My second and third year I was in chamber singers.
Chamber singers was cool because we tightened up, the groups were tightened up, and we did some more.
Arvo Pärett's Magnificat we did.
Yes.
That's a great piece.
That was a great piece.
Very difficult to sing, but a great piece.
But you weren't in Magical Singers.
I was not in Magical Singers.
Okay. Magical Singers was what I was in. I liked that group a lot. It was the Baroque. We did a lot of Baroque music. And it was like...
Did anyone try to fix it?
No. We tried, but no, joking.
That's a bad music joke.
Yeah, it was a very bad music joke. The funniest thing with that was having to sing in period garb. Definitely.
And it's funny because I laughed at that, and then when I graduated college, I got a phone call from my director from high school, Sandy Valera. He was director of the Old Bethpage Village Singers, and he was retiring, and he recommended me to come in and sing with the group. So I was in Old Bethpage garb,
Yeah, but that's not as bad as walking around.
It's not
walking around in a tunic and tights.
That is true. That is very true.
A tunic that was almost a mini skirt and tights.
Yep, that's very true.
Yeah, but that was a lot of fun too because that puts you at a different level because you're only about 12 singers, 3 to a part.
Yep.
And the way that some of that music was written, I was singing alto okay, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So we're talking choirs. Now, we talked Carmina Burana. O Fortuna was that grand piece where the tenors hit the C's for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I had the C's, but it took time for me to really, like when we were in performance, they were there, the intensity of everything. Where do you stand on falsetto? And I ask for one reason. So for those of you who don't know what falsetto are, you probably have heard people do it and just not realize that they were doing falsetto.
You heard it in the intro because my high A was falsetto.
Right. So falsetto essentially is you're out of your vocal range of your high notes. It's mainly in guys that really that this hits in.
So people will argue that women have a falsetto. I say they don't, because I think, is it biologically or scientifically? One of the two.
Still, biologically is scientifically.
Yeah. So basically, if you think about the way falsetto actually works in the male voice, it is similar to the way harmonics work on an instrument.
Right.
Where not your full vocal cord is vibrating. It's just a portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very similar to like if you mute part of a guitar string and play it without actually pressing the string down, it creates that harmonic tone. That's essentially what falsetto is. From what I understand about the female voice, their vocal cords are not long enough for that to actually physically happen.
Right.
And it takes an incredible amount of control, and I don't know anyone that can do it because their vocal cords are shorter
Right.
and different shape. So I don't think that it's possible. That's what people have told me. Women have what they call a whistle tone, which is similar to a falsetto, but the full vocal cord still vibrates. It's just an airier sound. So
I to put that in layman's terms and not use all the musical terms, when everybody makes fun of singing high voice, when they're being funny and going, oh, that's falsetto.
that's falsetto.
That you're just the way you're shifting your voice. But so I have I have two friends that are opera singers. So maybe when we get their interview going, because we have to schedule that, we can ask them.
Yeah.
Be a great question. So my question to you now, where do you stand on that in a choir setting? For example, for me, when I was still training my voice and finding the right professor to work with, and I think all my professors I worked with were fantastic. They just took me to different levels.
Yeah.
There were some notes that I was still training on. So I'm going to use that high C in Carmina Burrata, that piece. I had to hit that with a falsetto here and there when we were practicing.
Yeah.
Of course, like I said, in the middle of concert, the intensity, everything that's going on, I was able to hit that note, and clearly and comfortably. It didn't hurt or anything like that. Where do you stand on using your falsetto voice?
I think it's extremely important in terms of building your voice. I don't think it matters whether you're singing full voice or falsetto in a choral setting, because it doesn't. I mean, it's part of the music, and you can color your falsetto in a way that it would sound full voice.
True.
You can add a mixture of head voice and chest voice into your falsetto if you really want to do.
True.
So I have no problem with it.
What about in a solo setting?
A solo setting, I'm a little bit more strict, I guess.
Right.
As long as it's a good sound, I have no problem with it.
Like, I don't know if I would sing a piece where it required me to go into falsetto in a solo setting. To your point, I would feel more comfortable in a choir because, yes, I could tailor it to that sound and make it work.
Right.
So I'm just curious. I know some people don't care. If it's blended right, you won't know the difference, and it works.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, it's a weird person to bring up, but I think his control is amazing. Jack Black.
Yeah.
If you think about his falsetto, when he goes into falsetto, you don't know that it's falsetto sometimes because he is able to color it in a way and focus it and project it in a way that it is perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, no, he actually has actually has very good control of his voice. Yes. Whether he was trained or it's a natural thing, I
want to find that out. That's one of the things that we need to research.
We should, yeah. I think because of who he is, he doesn't get enough credit for what he's capable of doing with his voice.
Yeah.
Even Kyle Gass. Kyle Gass is put, as a musician,
and as a singer, he's great too.
Yeah, he's got incredible control on the guitar, but then if you listen to some of the pieces they've done together, he's the one hitting the high notes. I mean, you pointed it out in one of the pieces on their, I think it was their tribute album. I forget what the album. It's like the last piece. I think it was the City Hall piece, and there's a piece where he's just riding a note for like a good few beats, and that's musician wise, they're fantastic. And it's just like Weird Al Yankovic. Okay. He decided to do parody music because he thought it was fun and he's a comedian. But when you actually hear him sing and take a moment to sing his voice, his control is incredible. His musicianship is ridiculous. And I think that we don't take into consideration that because we see that as more of it's entertainment or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, no, it was one of the things because I trained my falsetto in order to help me with my vocal range.
Yep.
That's one of my professors told me, and I thank that professor. I think now he's like the head of music in one of the schools upstate. But that it was just, and that was another question that came up. Like someone was like, "Oh, I don't know if I like." I don't know. I think like you said, I think if it works, just go with it. Just enjoy it.
So we had my buddy Ethan, who I'm trying to get on the podcast. His dad was actually a voice teacher in our area.
Still
I started
is,
studying
right?
with him. Yeah, still is. And I studied with Ron for a while when I was in college. And when I first started singing with him, he's like, "Listen, I'm going to give you something to do for the next month. I'm going on vacation." He says, "I want you to sing falsetto and nothing but falsetto for a month, and I'll see you in a month." And he was absolutely right. I mean, he was talking about how falsetto helps sharpen your vocal cords and make a better focused sound in your regular voice. And his whole point was that the way falsetto feels for a guy, there's really no tension in your throat and your face, and that's what regular singing should feel like. He said, "So you're gonna sing falsetto for a month, and I'll be back from my vacation. We'll come back and we'll figure out what to do next."
I'm going to do that now. I'm going to sing falsetto for a month.
And what's funny is like now that I'm getting back into singing, one of the reasons I was singing Taylor Swift and Carly Rae Jepsen was because I need to start singing falsetto more. So
That's
I was singing.
Hysterical.
I was singing all of that this afternoon, waiting for you to hop on. So
Okay, so all right, let's talk. Let's talk a little bit more. Let's go back to choirs for a second because I could talk about singing all day long. You could use the technical terms, and I can use the layman's terms. So I've been out of it a little bit. That's why. Yeah. That's all it is. When is it a choir? How many people? Is there, right? Okay, so I asked this. I asked this because our barbershop quartet is 4 guys.
I would say no.
Right? No. So where do we go to choir?
I would say the minimum is 3 voices on a part.
So so the magical singers that I was in, where there's 3 voices on a part, we were considered a choir?
I would say yes.
I'm gonna Google this. What makes you say that?
So, because of a lot of choral music is written in 8 parts. Most of it's written in 4, but there's the exceptions are 8. Very few pieces are written in 12 and 16 parts. So, my cutoff is that if you have a piece that's 8 parts, you have at least 1.5 people on a part. I guess maybe the answer is maybe 16 is a better answer than 12.
So, okay, so I just typed it in, and this is the randomness that came up because it's going to your conversation. The first thing that comes up, which of course is Wikipedia, so it's hard to kind of go by this, but it says a chorus, choral society, or a large ensemble is usually a choir of 40 or more singers, right? But then you scroll down, what makes up a choir? Body of singers with more than one voice to a part. Okay. More than one voice to a part. So to your point, 3 or so to a part.
Yep.
And then you have some of these that are like 20 to 36 singers or, whatever like that.
Right. So if you take the average of 4 to 8 parts per piece, that's 16 people would be the minimum.
So so in that low teen range. Yeah. It was just because it's very interesting because you don't think about that.
Right.
You think of a choir, you think of this large group of humans standing on a stage and singing when you don't need to have that large of a group. Yeah. And there is a group called the 16, and they specialize in Baroque music. They do Bach cantatas and stuff like that. They're an amazing group. But at that point there's 2 on each part. When the piece is 8 parts. So it's really funny. I just typed it in. I was getting the Oxford Dictionary, whatever. It says an organized group of singers, typically one that takes part in church services or performs regularly in public.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's the other debate: is it a chorus or a choir?
Right. Okay. So go in and explain the difference between that.
I don't know that I don't know the difference.
So so choir, an organized group of singers,
It's
typically
probably more sacred music than a chorus. It would be my guess.
So let's see what they say for chorus. The beauty of Google and being able to type it in real quick. And so a chorus, a part of a song that is repeated after each verse. Okay, so that's breaking down like a pop song or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, a large organized group of singers, especially one that performs together with an orchestra or an opera company. So a choir is seen more as secular, whereas a chorus is seen more as a whatever. Like you're just singing whatever.
Gotcha.
Interesting. So choirs, which would make sense as to why in education they're called chorus and not a choir.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are taking that secular part out of it.
Right.
Which goes back to your point that if we listen to each other, we'd be more of a chorus of people versus just people yelling at each other.
Yep.
Wow. It's a little bit of philosophy thrown into this episode.
You know, the last episode was too fun. We had to get back to get serious for a little while.
No. Yeah, as you come in with a theme song for CJ, that guy. So choirs.
That was not a chorus or a choir because there was only 4 parts and 1 person.
Do you have a chorus or choir/chorus that you prefer to listen to, or do you kind of just go based on the music? You do.
Yes, I do. So there are 2. Both of the choirs or schools I wanted to go to when I transferred out of Post. So we never talked. I don't think I ever told you why I transferred out of Post.
You were just getting away from me.
Well, that was a big part of it.
Paused it.
It's like, oh my, he found out. Who told him?
Who told him? It's in my transcript. By the way, this is your fault.
So I was about to start choral methods, my last year, and Dashna went on sabbatical, and his replacement I did not like. So I did not.
That's right. He did go on sabbatical.
That's why I left.
What year was it that you left?
2002.
Was it it was the first semester of 2000, fall semester?
Yes, I finished the spring of 2002 and I left fall of 2002.
Okay, ironic part to this. The spring of 2002, I've been out sick for 6 weeks. Respiratory, bronchitis, respiratory. I just run out. He was willing to keep.
Was it COVID?
No. So I withdraw from all my regular classes, and he was willing to let me stay in just so I can maintain my scholarship because I did have a little bit of scholarship. And I was like, that's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I went to the community college in that fall semester when he was on sabbatical to make up the courses that I needed to make up from the spring to. That's really funny because that was the other reason. That was why I did it, because I knew he wasn't going to be there.
Yep.
And when did you first meet him?
He did an all-state.
We were both in that.
Yep.
That's where I met him.
Yep, that's where I met him.
I didn't meet you though.
No, I didn't meet you either.
No, but we were in the same one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I was going to go to Hofstra, and then I didn't get a very good scholarship, so I was like, well, let's check out Post, and I met him. He was there for my audition, and he's like, hey, it's a Thursday. Let's give you like this amount of money. I was like, all right, cool.
Right.
He goes, all right, let me hear you play. All right, well, here's some more money. I was like, all right, cool. He goes, oh, Sandy Valera, here's some more money. And I was like, all right. So, yeah.
That's too funny.
Yep.
So that and to say that that meeting him there was the reason why I was willing to go to Post.
Mm-hmm.
I did audition for other schools, and
yep.
At the time my SAT scores weren't the greatest, and
yeah, that was my thing. My SAT scores weren't great.
Some of the schools were like, nah, you don't have the SAT scores, even though we think you're a great voice, we think you're talent, you think we're not going to take you because you don't have the SAT score. Where he was like, all right, cool, let's do it.
So to get back to your original question,
yes.
the choirs that I listened to St. Olaf, which was one of the main
Okay.
choirs that I wanted to go to. They're out of Minnesota. The Concordia Choir again in Minnesota. The other ones I listen to are the Nordic Choir. They've gone through some director changes. Weston Noble was there forever. He was there for like 50 years, and he retired and then eventually passed away. And they've gone through several directors since then, and they really haven't found their way back to where they were. But when I was in high school, we went to the Nordic Choir. That was one of our field trips. Was we went to Alice Tully Hall, saw the Nordic Choir. And it was one of the most amazing concerts I've ever seen. I remember, they got up, they did a piece called Prayer of the Children, and it was just men. And I had never heard a men's chorus sound like this ever in my life. It was unbelievable. And it was just a great group.
That's awesome.
But yeah.
I couldn't say. You know what it is? I guess for me, I don't have a specific chorus or choir that I listen to,
Mhm.
but because I do enjoy opera, just listening to an opera chorus is just. There's just something about it. I don't want to say the Met. I mean, my grandfather sang at the Met in their chorus for over 40 something years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just that. It's just those choirs to me. And I think part of that was there was an ambition of mine to audition to potentially be in it. And, for certain circumstances, I didn't make that decision. I didn't do it. I didn't audition. Part of it is just because, seeing that there was like no work-life balance with
Right.
a lot of those. I just,
Mhm.
I didn't want to do that, but I just miss, like, just within the past couple of weeks, like I said, just missing kind of singing with a group of people
Mm-hmm.
that have
Yep.
that same mentality while you're there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. I like this. We need to pick another. I mean, we probably could go on more about choirs and choruses.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we certainly can.
Like touching base with like playing in a symphonic
Mhm.
band or orchestra and all that good stuff.
Yep.
What else? You got anything else you wanted to share or add to it?
I could talk all night about it. I think this is probably a good place to wrap for now.
And maybe touch base, revisit.
Yeah, and I just one more thing because you mentioned symphonic band. There's for me because I played with you in symphonic winds and all that sort of stuff too. There's a difference for me when it's a voice as opposed to an instrument. There's something just more intimate about a voice and the sound, and I mean that's why I gravitate towards choirs more too. And I think the other thing is, that I'm an aspiring troubadour. I want to walk around with a guitar and just sing with people.
It's fantastic. By the way,
But
I have a new guitar.
oh, do you?
See that case back there?
Uh-huh.
That is my brother. It's an Ibanez. My brother has an acoustic
nice.
electric. It's a little dinged up, but I'm gonna get some strings. Check it out.
Sweet.
Yeah. Sorry,
There we
didn't
go.
mean to cut you off.
That's okay. But I mean, I like the going back to the whole music band thing where they're just four guys just standing around and they just sing. Like that's kind of a cool thing. And I remember when I was in college, I went to Concordia in Bronxville. There was the little old lady that was teaching sight singing. She told me about this church that her sister belongs to. It was a church of like non-musicians. They had no organist, but someone had a pitch pipe, and every week they sang 4-part harmony because that was just the tradition of the church. And like that doesn't happen. Like that's awesome, you know.
Doesn't.
But the fact that you can make music without an instrument, you know, just a couple other people is just cool to me, you know, and that's.
I think that leads us into talking about a cappella music at some point.
Yes. Well, we don't really have a topic for next week.
Well, I was gonna choose an artist spotlight, but why don't we talk about a cappella music?
Why don't we go a cappella music
and bring in some and just share some artists on that?
Yeah, sure.
I like it because that takes us away from the instruments, but kind of brings the instruments back in a different way.
Yep.
I think we have our topic for next week.
I think we do.
Awesome. We'll figure out we'll fight for who's doing the research on this one.
I think we should both just do stuff.
That's a good idea. We should both do it.
Both do it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, cool. Anything else? Because I don't have anything else.
No. I think we should wrap it because we're about at an hour and I don't want to.
The listeners love it. All right.
I hope they love it.
Who's what song are you gonna play at the end? You have something yet? You're gonna just.
I do. I'm gonna play one of my all-time favorites. A section of a piece called "Wake Awake for Night Is Flying." It's an Advent hymn written by or arranged by F. Milius Christiansen, who was the founder of the St. Olaf Choir.
Okay, cool.
It's a really neat piece, and it starts with the part I'm going to start with starts with just women, and then the basses come in, and it feels like the entire choir is giving you a hug with sound. It's just this
awesome.
massive roar kind of
awesome.
feeling. So I'll play a little bit of that as we close out.
Do you want to read the closing?
I don't have the closing anywhere near.
All right, so awesome. All right, cool. Thank you for listening to Turn on the Music, the podcast. We hope that you join us next week. Follow us on Twitter at Turn on the Music and on Instagram at Turn on the Music Podcast. If you like what you heard, share it with a friend. Share the podcast. Share the music. And if you really want to help us promote the show, head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. Thank you for listening. Kyle, you have a fantastic evening.
You do. And just a quick aside, thank you all for sticking with us. This was probably a difficult one to get through, but I think it was worthwhile getting through it. So
yes, absolutely.
So thank you all. See you next week.